What is going on YouTube? This is Acid Roots. So I'm going to review the third album by rapper Juicy J. Basically, this project is called Stay Trippy and it came out in the summer of 2013. Now, this is a particular hit album. This is Juicy J when he lined This is a particular hit album. This is Juicy J when he lined up with Wiz Khalifa's Taylor Gang Records, which is a pretty dope concept just because the amalgamation of this type stuff. Juicy J basically had some new tricks from his previous album, which was Hustle Till I Die from 2009. Now, I reviewed that in February of 2024. Now, I reviewed Hustle Till I Die in January of 2024, but this is a pretty hit album. This is a pretty stark difference from that particular album, whereas Hustle Till I Die was a lot more horrorcore and more grim type music, just in a more nightmarish kind of sense. This is a more particularly kind of nightclub and ratchet kind of album. So Juicy J definitely glossed into his particular sound and just got a lot more flashy and ritzy and just overall pizzazz. Like I'd have to say, this is a good bounce of an album. I definitely would have to suppose it's more in like the nightclubs and strip clubs more so than like the dance clubs and raves. I would have to say, but it's still pretty good concept to get a lot of night pizzazz. This is a pretty slick outing of an album. I'd have to say this is definitely a lot more glossy and just overall sheer, just in terms of like the bravado that this particular album kind of has. It has the stunt songs on here, it has the flex songs, it has the smokish songs, it has the VIP songs, the money making songs, just stuff like that to kind of have for some songs for like making it rain and some stuff like that. Just some good pitches to kind of have just within some night outings, just for stepping out of bed. It's definitely a great weekend album and stuff like that. But the thing about Hustle Till I Die is just looking after that particular album. There's not a ton of songs on this particular album, Stay Trippy, compared to Hustle Till I Die's Night Flash of just kind of more grim, smokish, and residential type outings. That was Hustle Till I Die was very much like a night album just for residential type fare, just smoking in the neighborhood, stuff like that, just going and getting snackage and some of those type tunes. Just for I mean, this album is still pretty smoke heavy. Stay Trippy is still pretty smoke heavy, but it's just in a lot more of like a social and kind of more recreational type sense, just for like some kind of just for like some stepping out and kind of social type vibes, I'd have to say. But the concept of Hustle Till I Die, that one was a lot more residential, but this one isn't. It has like maybe one or two songs. If you do miss like the vibes from Hustle Till I Die, it has like maybe one or two songs like that. But for the most part, this is a pretty classic album. Just gonna have to go ahead and say that this album's gonna get a classic score because this is probably one of the definitive albums, I would have to say, in my opinion, from like the 2010s decade, and especially the first half of the 2010s in terms of commercial rap. I'd have to say it just did a lot of damage. It was a big deal, particularly because of a couple songs like Bounce It, Show Out, and Bands Make Her Dance. Particularly Bands That Make Her Dance was kind of like Juicy J's comeback song, just because he kind of brandished, just because Juicy J had a pretty severe second win between teaming up with Mike Will Made It and Wiz Khalifa and some of those type folks. It's a pretty good pitch. That was one of the bigger Bands That Make Her Dance is one of the bigger rap songs out of 2012 as far as that pitch going to happen. And this album lasted for a good while. It lasted between about the summer of 2012, the late summer of 2012, to about the winter of 2014 as far as that pitch kind of happened. So this was pretty dominant album throughout 2013 and the second half of 2012 and the first half of 2014. This is definitely an album that I listened to quite a bit. I really appreciate this album quite a bit. It's just a good classic album. Like I was saying, pretty definitive, like the early 2010s. Now, there are some folks that could say some stuff like some J. Cole stuff, some Kanye West, Yeezus, Jay-Z's, like Jay-Z's Magna Carta Holy Grail, Drake's 2013 album. I forget what that one's called. Nothing was the same. Some of those type pitches, but in terms of like a more ratchet kind of sense, this album is pretty littered and ratchet. I'd have to say it's a good concept just to get some of this music because the only real folks that were really doing this sort of sound for the most part that were pretty commercial is just 2 Chainz and maybe like a couple other cats. Can't really think of apart from 2 Chainz and a little bit of Jeezy around that particular time. Juicy J was particularly one of the highlighted ones to do ratchet music around that particular time in the early 2010s. So it's a pretty good pitch. We're going to go ahead and talk about the singles here. There's a good portion of these, even though Bands That Make Her Dance was the biggest one in terms of commercial marketing. There was a lot of songs that were pretty good on like the rap charts, and this was just a big deal in kind of like a social sense, where this was kind of a casual album. But the thing about this, even though these songs did not chart that heavily in like the casual market, this was a pretty casual appeal. Like Juicy J had some real good casual appeal in like the early 2010s as far as that pitch going to happen. Definitely his affiliation with Wiz Khalifa really helped around this particular time, and he was just a highlighted name when you look at like the album Hustle Till I Die by Juicy J from 2009. That was a good album. I definitely gave that album like a 10 out of 10, but it just was not that much of a commercial smash. And it was kind of an awkward place for like 3 6 Mafia around that time, just because their hit album from 2008, that was the last that you really saw them. So it was just kind of, or Juicy J in the 2000s was just kind of more low key and just kind of somewhat blowing up. But with this album, he was kind of in the widespread kind of like commercial appeal, and he was kind of at the forefront for a while as far as that concept kind of went. So it's just a good concept. There's definitely some good stuff to kind of get this here, but we'll go ahead and talk about the singles. So the first single is Bands That Make Her Dance. This is a pretty nice one. This is like a relevant kind of early 2010 strip club flash of a song, I'd have to say. This is like a commercial rap highlight, definitely, and this is just a shimmering And this is just a shimmering kind of hit, I'd have to say. So it's a pretty highlighted one. I'd have to say Lil Wayne and 2 Chainz are on this song also, which is pretty awesome to kind of get. So I definitely like the concept of this particular one. But this is basically like Juicy J's comeback single as far as that pitch kind of happens. This is like one of the first ones. This was his highest charting. This is Juicy J's highest charting hit up to that point, apart from some stuff he did with 3 6 Mafia. But in terms of the solo stuff, this was his big breakout as far as that pitch kind of happened with it. This is pretty commercial rap. This is definitely a song when you think of like Future and folks like that, Kanye West, Future, some folks who were kind of relevant to like some folks that were kind of relevant to commercial rap in 2012 and early 2013. This is a good pitch. Folks like ASAP Rocky, a little bit of Lil Wayne around that time, just that commercial kind of pitch, something like Future, but not quite as trap heavy. This is just more ratchet music. There is a difference between ratchet and kind of R and bass type music compared to like trap music and the stuff that Future was kind of doing. This is just a lot more ratchet, something more similar to 2 Chainz type vibes as far as that pitch kind of happens with it, I'd have to say. But it's a pretty good concept to get that one. Show Out is the second single. I'd have to say this is another pretty highlighted one. This has Big Sean and Jeezy on there. This is another nice one to kind of get. This is like a louder, more turnt and revved song than Bands to Make Her Dance, I'd have to say. This is like a good, glissy, ratchet bop, I'd have to say. And this is a night outing. Definitely. This is some night outing pizzazz, I'd have to say. And this is just a pretty fly song. So Bands to Make Her Dance is a little bit more sleazy of like a social flash that it particularly kind of has. This kind of vanilla strip club type tune, I'd have to say, in terms of some nightlife, I'd have to suppose. But then Show Out's kind of more of like ratchet music. This one's a little bit more turnt, a little bit more drinks in your system, stuff like that, having a little bit, not quite a dance club song, but definitely some turn up just within the pitch of stepping out. These are definitely some excellent songs. I mean, back at the time, this was litty. This is about as litty as it got in terms of some of the aspects of like, I mean, apart from, I mean, there's definitely, yeah, this is definitely some of the littiest moments that it got back in 2013 in terms of the pitch of just some of that social kind of affability. These were just simmering type songs that just had a lot of good flash about them and just overall velocity that just worked pretty heavily, I'd have to say. So that's a nice one. Bounce It is the third single, and this is kind of a simmering mid-pace, almost EDM dance club hit, I'd have to say. This one's probably the most commercial of the album singles, I'd have to say, and this is just good for some quick time. So this one definitely has a pretty nice feel about it. This has Wale and Trey songs on there, I'd have to say. The particular concept about the songs, I was surprised that this song didn't do better back in the day when it came out. This is definitely a pretty glossy one. This is like the most commercial one. I was surprised that this one didn't outstrip Bands to Make Her Dance, but it was just kind of, it was big on like the rap charts, and it has over 100 million plays on Spotify nowadays, so it was a big deal. It was just kind of the concept. Looking back upon the commercial appeal of this particular song, it just didn't get quite as big as it needed to. It's just kind of the concept. I think Show Out actually outstripped this song in terms of commercial markets, but still pretty good job. Just did some excellent work. All of these songs were a good deal. All of these songs were a big deal back at the time, I would have to say. It's just a real kind of casual market that just worked pretty well. And Juicy J was pretty much like the litty party animal around this particular time as far as that particular pitch kind of happened with it. It was just some good concepts to kind of get. Talking About was the fourth single. Now this was kind of Talking About was the fourth single. This was another highlighted one. This came out later on after the album had been out for a few months. I definitely like this one, but it's just one that just didn't have the sheer success of the first three. Just didn't have the sheer success of the first three singles, but it's still a pretty highlighted single to kind of pay attention to. I wouldn't forget about this song because it's a pretty nice one. This one has some wintry sparkle of like a tune similar to Bone Thugs. This one has some wintry sparkle of a tune similar to Bone Thugs. I'd have to say Wiz Khalifa really does a hook that's pretty similar to like the Bone Thugs. Wiz Khalifa does a hook that's pretty similar to like the Bone Thugs crew as far as that pitch kind of happens with it. Pretty good concept, and this is just a song similar to Bone Thugs in like the colder weather, I'd have to say. And this is just a breezy kind of commute hopper. So this is just a breezy kind of commute hopper. So this is definitely a pretty highlighted one. Just really like the mellow kind of affability feels of this particular one. There are some Traverse songs on here. It's kind of here and there. This album doesn't have like the big guns kind of car songs as far as that pitch kind of happens. Not to say that that's a bad thing. I definitely like the concept of some of these Traverse type tunes like Talking About, and then there's another one on here like I would say The Woods is a pretty good one for that, and then there's like, yeah, Talking About's a pretty good one for that. Smoke a Nigga is a pretty good one for that in terms of like car traverse and things like that. Wax is a pretty nice one. So there's just some good concepts. There's some good concepts to kind of get some of these. But I did like the wintry kind of appeal of this. There are a few winter songs on this particular album that work pretty well. Another one that's kind of in that pitch is The Woods. That one just kind of has like a dreary kind of, The Woods kind of has like a dreary kind of bristle about it, I'd have to say. So that's a pretty good concept. But those are the four singles. Definitely like the concept. Wiz Khalifa and Chris Brown are on Talking About. So it's a good concept to kind of get that one. Just really like the appeal of that. It's a decently kind of commercial tune for Juicy J as far as that pitch kind of has with that one. It's just kind of a different angle from Juicy J as far as that kind of has. This one's not quite as horrific or as ratchet, I'd have to say, but it's just kind of some residential, just kind of here and there type fare, just in like Traverse and things like that. It's not really that much of a smokage song. It's not really that much of a smokage song either. It's just kind of some Traverse. So that's kind of the concept about it. But So I am reviewing the deluxe edition of this album, which has 19 songs in here. The standard edition has 16, but the deluxe has 19, so that's 3 extra songs. One of which is the 3 extra songs on the deluxe would be 1,000, Having Sex, and One of Those Nights, and 2 out of 3 of those I recommend. So to talk about the songs I recommend on here, basically out of 19 songs, there's really only 2 songs I don't recommend. That would just be No Heart, No Love, and then 1,000. Those are the only real 2 poor ones. Talk about those real quick. Basically, No Heart, No Love is kind of a song similar fashion to like it's in similar fashion to like Hustle Till I Die from 2009 by Juicy J. Project Pat's on this particular song. I just didn't enjoy this one that much because I kind of feel like, not to say that Juicy J outgrew that particular sound, but it just did not quite have the compelling edge that I was figuring that he would have bolstered by all the leveling up that he did between 2012 and 2013. I feel like the old vibes from 2009, early 2010 just didn't really fit this particular album because the expansion of that particular sound was just not quite as compelling this time. But I do like the fact that Project Pat was on here, but he just didn't mesh with this particular sound as well. I know that Project Pat probably could do ratchet music, but this is just not a good example of that classic vintage kind of residential type horror type music that was on Hustle Till I Die. Just didn't really do it that well. And then 1,000 from the deluxe edition, that was trying to be like a song similar to Smoke a Nigga and Talking About It. Just didn't really pull off the pitch quite as well as that one. It was just basically like a dreary type tune, but it just didn't really have as much affability that time around. I'd have to say it was just kind of a poor one that just didn't really compel as much as I want it to. I'd have to say is this kind of concept about it. But really, that's not much that it's not that. But really, that's not that much of a deal because this album's going to get a 10 out of 10, 17 out of 19. It's just pretty damn sheer. I'd have to say that you just don't get too many albums that have that. You just don't get too many albums that have that sort of sheer appeal. Just that many songs, just a blockade of that many hit after hit after hit after hit songs. I'd have to say, and especially in terms of the aspect of it being not just hit songs, but also kind of in the social aspects of like stepping out and having some great nightlife and smokage and things like that, and ladies tunes, and just overall flash of just having some excellent kind of outing fun. So it's a good concept for that. So the social score will probably get a 10 too. But talk about some of these songs. Like Scholarship is a pretty nice one. This is like a glossy nightclub hopper, I'd have to say, for blue collar night outings. I would definitely feel like this is like a makeshift gem for some 9 to 5 life, definitely, and it's a bop. So when I say about 9 to 5 life, this is basically like a song for folks who want to have like a night pizzazz, but they're not necessarily just like in a more rugged sense. For folks that do have work the next day, if it's like Sunday night or Monday night, something like that, and you do have to be at work, 9 to 5 life like the next day is kind of a good concept to kind of have some money flash for your students. Some of those type pitches is just kind of like a good song that keeps the blue collar aspect kind of in mind. I do like the fact that Juicy J at least did a song like this. I do at least like the fact that Juicy J did a song like this. It's a pretty good concept to kind of get something like this just within a blue collar type flash as far as that pitch kind of has with it. It's a real nice one. The Woods is another highlighted one. This is The Woods with Justin Timberlake and Timbaland's a pretty highlighted one. This is like a simple date night type song, I'd have to say. Pretty good pitch, just kind of having like a more wintry brush as far as that pitch kind of happens with it. This is like a 3-6 Mafia version of like some commercial, almost pop rap, I'd have to say. Has a pretty good Justin Timberlake and Timbaland type hook on there, definitely, and it's just a pretty grim hit. So it kind of keeps the commercial rap feel just within the standard Juicy J sense of having some of that grimness about it. Not quite a horrorcore type song, but it's also not quite full blown. It's not quite a horrorcore song, but it's also not quite a full blown commercial rap type song. I'd have to say it's just a good pitch to kind of get this just within a pretty haunting type sense. It's a good song. I like the topic of the song being in the woods as far as that pitch kind of happens. Just a nice one to kind of get for that simple date night stuff like that. Just a good pitch to kind of have like some pop rap just within like a more 3-6 Mafia sense. So it's a good concept seeing Juicy J go solo and still not sell out as far as that pitch kind of happens. One of the craziest songs on this particular album would be Gun Plus a Mask with Yellow Wolf. Definitely enjoyed this one. This is a real good highlight. This is like a vintage kind of 3-6. This is definitely like a vintage kind of 3-6 Mafia nightmarish gem. I'd have to say this has a haunting beat and it's one of the album's best, I'd have to say, in terms of that particular productions. This is just like a Yellow Wolf and Juicy J completely shred the song, and Yellow Wolf goes crazy on the song. Yellow Wolf and Juicy J completely shred the song, and Yellow Wolf goes completely crazy on the song at the end of it. He just really starts screaming on the song, gets pretty crazy on this particular one, so it's a pretty good highlight for that, I'd have to say. All I Blow Is Loud is a pretty nice one. This is like a ratchet kind of night out pizzazz, I'd have to say. It's got a similar vibe to Show Out, definitely. It's a pretty good concept for that. This is like a good jam. This is like a good gem, and this is like a regular kind of fraternized bop, I'd have to say. So this is a pretty highlighted one. This is a good 1-2 punch with Show Out. I definitely have to feel like these are just some good nightlife. All I Blow Is Loud is like a good 1-2 punch with Show Out. I'd have to say it's a pretty good concept to kind of get that one. I would definitely say if you're a fan of like early 2010s commercial rap, I'd say this is a pretty good highlight to kind of get in that sense. It's definitely some vintage type vibes for that particular time as far as that kind of goes. This was definitely pretty litty around the time. Definitely some good pizzazz just for stepping out and a good flash of just having that pizzazz. This still hits pretty heavily. I'd say a lot of these songs, they're not quite that old. They don't reek of old age that badly, I'd have to say. It's a good concept to still kind of mess with some of these. I feel like songs like All I Blow Is Loud, Show Out, Scholarship, some of these type ones, If It Ain't, There's definitely some highlighted ones, even Bounce It in some senses, even though that's more EDM prone. I'd have to say a lot of these do continue to still have some highlighted type feels despite it being 2024 and things like that. Definitely a pretty good concept. On the deluxe edition, an extreme highlight on here would be One of Those Nights with the Weekend. Definitely enjoyed this one. This is like a super malaise kind of commercial dark grimness of a song. I'd have to say definitely enjoyed that. This has a superb hook and bridge from the Weekend. He definitely did an excellent job. This is the Weekend. This is kind of in the early stages for the Weekend when he was starting to blow up a bit in 2013, but this is definitely one of his best features from 2013, I'd have to say. And this is just a good blend of Juicy and the Weekend on this particular song. Juicy J completely killed this song by having this team up. This really has some haunting type vibes, and the blend of like a 3-6 Mafia type sound with like the XO type sound of the Weekend. This works pretty heavily, so this is a nice one. Definitely recommend getting the deluxe edition for this particular song. Wax is another highlight. This is like a dreary kind of excellent smokage fun, I'd have to say. This is an in a days kind of zone out times of this is an in a days kind of zone out times of a song, I'd have to say, and this is just some good snackage and hangout times definitely. And this has a great sample on there. So this has the same sample as like the song by Styles P. I forget what it's called, but it's one of his singles off of his 2002 album. Definitely enjoyed that particular one. Pretty good highlight to kind of get this one. Just a great kind of sped up sample. It's like a chipmunk soul, something like that, and it just works pretty heavily. Great song to just smoke a whole bunch too. Just really get some smoke sessions kind of going as far as that pitch kind of has with it. Just an easy highlight. And there's a ton of smoking songs on here. Once again, just like with Hustle Till I Die from 2009, Juicy packs on like the smoking song. So you've got at least 4 or 5, maybe even 6 smoking songs as far as that pitch can have. There's just definitely some good ones. Having Sex is another highlight off the deluxe edition. This has Trina and 2 Chainz on there, which is a pretty good pitch. Trina, it's interesting to see Trina way out in 2013, just the pitch that she was particularly on. And then 2 Chainz is on this album twice, so it's a pretty good concept. This is like a jittery and kind of jazzy ratchet cut, I'd have to say. It's a pretty solid dance song, definitely. It's just some mid-pace kind of evening times, I'd have to say. And it's just a stock kind of turn-up cut. So this one kind of has like a little bit of a jazzy type beat, I'd have to suppose. A little bit more of like kind of would like show out a little bit, just the same sort of night pizzazz as show out, just with a little bit more ritziness and jitteriness of it. It's just a little bit more of a jazzy kind of jittery type song, I'd have to suppose. Just a little bit more jazzy and jittery type one, I'd have to suppose. A little bit more ground level, just within that relative pitch. Not quite as elevated, just within the pitch of just like really flashy and just kind of a flex song. This is less of a flex song, more of like a ground level kind of almost fraternized type song, something like that. Flirt with the honey, some stuff like that as far as that pitch kind of has with it. Just a good concept to kind of get that particular pitch. This really works. Money to Do It's a pretty highlighted one. This is definitely one of the best beats on the album at the beginning of the song, I'd have to say. This is like a vintage kind of 3-6 Mafia malaise, I'd have to say. This is like a dark, grim kind of 2010s version of like, this is like a dark, grim kind of 2010s version of like some 3-6 Mafia type feels, I'd have to say. A pretty good concept to kind of particularly kind of get that. And this is like an easy kind of nightclub enjoyment, I'd have to say. And it's a pretty good smash. So it's a good concept to get this particular one. Really like this one. Just has real kind of grim and just overall simmering type beat, I'd have to suppose. It's a real kind of malaise type one. Just really like the haziness of this particular one. A lot of this album's pretty drugged out, I'd have to say. Really like the concept of this particular vibe. Juicy J was really kind of getting torched on this particular album. It's just a good pitch. It's just a great concept to kind of have the overall feel and aesthetic of this particular production field on this album is pretty great. And Juicy J has some real thrilling kind of lyrics on here. The guests really contribute to the album, so there's just plenty of good things to really talk about this. This pretty much has to be a classic album. I mean, there may be some folks that kind of feel that. There may be some folks that feel like that's arguable, but I definitely feel like in terms of impact and this overall aesthetic, this is pretty much one of the pitch albums like the first half of the 2010s, and if not the whole 2010s, I'd have to say this, and especially in terms of commercial rap, I'd have to say. So it's a good concept. If It Ain't's another pretty good highlight. This is like a glazed kind of feral night out gem, I'd have to say. This is like an excellent smoking song, definitely pretty good for that concept. This is like a gleaming kind of ratchet music, I'd have to say. That's pretty trendy, so it's a pretty good concept about this one. This is definitely a pretty litty type song. This is another one, not quite as much of nightclub pizzazz, but this one's just kind of more smoke with your pals type tune, just for stepping out and having some great times. Just not quite as residential, I'd have to say. It's just the concept of stepping out, but just kind of in the concept of that you're going to smoke and some stuff like that. Just have a good pitch to kind of step out a bit and have some drinks in your system, some stuff like that. It's just a really hazy beat. Another one of the album's best. This is a pretty instant. This is pretty immediate. This is a pretty instant and immediate beat to kind of have just in terms of quality, I'd have to say. So it's a good concept. So Much Money is another highlight. This is like a motivational bop with some bustle. I'd have to say it's a pretty good concept for that. It's like a great groove that this song has a great groove that it particularly kind of gets to. Definitely appreciate the overall feel of this. Definitely appreciate the overall feel of this particular one. I'd have to say this is like some night outing kind of. This is definitely some night outing commotion, I'd have to say, and this is a getting to it. And I would have to say this is a getting to it song in terms of the bustle, but it keeps it in a fun pitch as far as doing that. So it's just a concept. So it's definitely just a concept of being motivated in that sort of pitch as far as stepping out and getting ready to be on the grind, some of that type pitch, but also having some recreational value as far as that pitch kind of has with it. So it's kind of a smoking song, kind of some outing type fun as far as that pitch kind of has, but also about just kind of being on the grind and getting to the money and stuff like that, I'd have to say. So it's a good concept to kind of get this one. So it's a good pitch because this is definitely a pretty trendy type song for the early 2010s as far as that pitch kind of has with it. So it's some good stuff, I'd have to say. Another hit off this album would be Smoke and Roll, and definitely appreciated this one. This is like a Malaise kind of smoke something highlight, I'd have to say. Definitely appreciated that particular concept. This is a great weekend sample on this particular song, I'd have to say, and this is just some loud pack for some shrill kind of, and this would be a loud pack for some shrill kind of turn up fun, I'd have to say. So it's a pretty good concept. Definitely appreciated this particular one. This feels like a weekend song. I like the concept. Juicy J also sampled the weekend on his Blue Dream and Lean mixtape from 2011, so that's a pretty good pitch to get that particular one. It's a pretty good concept. Definitely like that. And then Smoke a Nigga is a pretty good highlight. This says Wiz Khalifa on there, and this is a pretty soulful type one, or at least a hazy type one, I'd have to say. It's like a hazy kind of commute and evening residential traverse, I'd have to suppose, about the song. Pretty good concept for that sort of pitch. This is like a mildly kind of ghost. The song has like a mildly kind of ghostly feel about it, I have to say, and this is just like some lazy kind of drive-through music. So I definitely feel like if you're getting drive-through like Taco Bell or KFC at like 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night, something of that sort of pitch, just some hazy kind of smoke sessions as far as that particular pitch kind of happens, just some kind of hotbox the car, some stuff like that, just some good traverse and just overall things like that, just kind of having like a more smokish type sense, just some hazy commute, just overall residential, just hop and bop through the neighborhood type appeal, just like an evening sense. I'd say this is a pretty good concept for that particular one. Just going to Wendy's at like 10 o'clock at night, some of that sort of pitch, just those type pitches, and just some of those type aspects as far as that particularly kind of goes. It's just a nice smokish kind of out on the town type one in a residential sense. So it's a good concept. And then Stop It's a pretty good highlight. This is another one that's pretty similar to like Hustle Till I Died, I have to suppose, but kind of in a more relative to 2013 type sense that has supposed kind of like a beefed up kind of version of Hustle Till I Die, just within like a relative. It's kind of like a blend of horrorcore and ratchet. I'd have to suppose a good concept. It has like a leery kind of eerie type vibe about it, but I do appreciate this song. It's like a leery kind of residential, almost horrorcore like beat that it particularly kind of has, and this is just good for some night traverse, I'd have to say. It's a vintage Juicy J type song, definitely. And I feel like this song is just some exhilarating kind of turn up. So it's a pretty good pitch to kind of get this particular one. This is definitely a pretty good smokish type. This is definitely a pretty good smokish tune just within that particular pitch. So I definitely appreciate this one. It's just classic kind of residential night fair and smokish tunes as far as that pitch kind of happens. Just getting snackage at the gas stations, things like that. Just with a little bit of like a ratchet kind of more social aspect about it for some stepping out like in a mild kind of night flash, I'd have to say. So it's a good concept for that one. And that's the album, I'd have to say. So basically, this album's going to get a 10 out of 10. Like I was saying, just some pretty good overall pitches just to kind of have classic album in terms of impact and stuff that it did. In terms of the social score, I'm going to give this album like a 10 out of 10 also, because you just don't get much better than this in terms of the overall social appeal that this album particularly kind of has. This whole album is chock full of smoking songs and just night outing flash and just stuff like that. Some pretty ritzy or just some overall pretty social pizzazz that just has a lot of appeal about it. This is just a great album for kind of stepping out and just having some nightlife as far as that pitch kind of happens, just within a ratchet sense and just some ratchet sense and just some overall kind of appeal. It's just unlike things for around that time. I mean, around this time back in late 2013, this was a big deal just because there weren't a ton of albums that kind of had this particular pitch in terms of like the jazziness and overall gloss this album particularly kind of had. So it did a lot. Thinking of other albums that like Drake was kind of more introspective and kind of more in like a moody pitch. J. Cole was going more introspective. Kanye West had some night flash, but he was just a lot more commercial. So if you're looking for like Southern hip hop, just to see the expansion of what happened after swag rap and stuff like that, after folks like Lil Wayne and like Jeezy were kind of switching up their sound, I'd have to say this is a good concept to kind of see what the Dirty South was up to around 2013, 2014, as far as that pitch kind of have a definite classic impact. So in terms of the future, like Juicy J has put out some projects. He at least has one out in 2020 in terms of an album, and he's done like some mixtapes and stuff like that. So he's around. He has a pretty heavy output. He's been doing stuff. I just would have to suppose he'll probably put out some more albums. We'll have to see what happens with that. But I'm definitely going to review some more of these. I do want to get to Rubber Band Business, the album from 2017. I'm definitely going to review that one soon enough, and I'm definitely going to get to some more Juicy J's mixtapes. But this is definitely a pretty classic album, and I highly recommend it, especially the deluxe. I highly recommend it, especially the deluxe version.